If you've been coming to CLC for a little bit, and maybe you came from a different church, you might have noticed that we do our tithe and our offering a little bit differently than other places. See, we don't teach a 10% tithe like a lot of churches do. We believe what's in 2 Corinthians 9, where it says that we reap what we sow. If we sow generously, then we'll reap generously. And if we sow sparingly, then we'll reap sparingly. And we do this based off of what God has placed on our heart to give. As we look through the New Testament teachings, we see that Jesus believed it was more important for a person to follow their law in their heart than it was even in their actions. That's because Jesus knew that if you loved the law in your heart and you believed the law in your heart, that it would play out in your everyday life. Now, Jesus didn't come to abolish the law. We know that. He said he came to be the fulfillment of the law. But what he did do was command us to do it in a different way. You see, when comparing the Old Testament commands to what Jesus says, we see that Jesus kind of always took it to the next level. He was kind of a one-upper. Do you know anybody like that? Hey, did I tell you how I broke my leg last week? That's nothing. One time I went skydiving and my shoe didn't go off, and I broke literally every bone in my body. Hey, did you hear about how I'm going to be going on that mission trip later on this year? Oh yeah? Well, one time I spent a whole year living in Africa, serving people, and I was homeless, and I was wearing literally nothing but a loincloth. In Matthew chapter 5, we see Jesus teaching in this way. He said things like, you've heard it said that if you commit murder, that you will be judged. Well, what Jesus said is if you even have anger in your heart towards a brother, you've already become guilty of murder. He also said that you've heard it said not to commit adultery. But he said that if you have lust in your heart after a woman that's not your wife, that in your heart you've already committed adultery. Now, when it comes to our generosity, he kind of gives us the same thing. You see, the Old Testament would teach a tithe or a percentage, and that percentage varied from time to time. But in the New Testament, Jesus didn't teach us to give a percentage of what we have. Jesus commanded us to give more than that. In fact, he commanded us to give our life. In 1 John chapter 3, it says this, by this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Now, here in a moment, you're going to have the opportunity to discuss what generosity means to you and what you think generosity means to God. But before you do that, I want to leave you with this thought. When it comes to our generosity, God doesn't ask us to give a lot. God asks us to give everything. Before we leave today, I want to leave you with another challenge. Now, I don't know where you are financially. I don't know if you're doing good, if you're doing poorly. I don't know how difficult it is for you right now. But what I want to challenge you is this. I want you to spend some time with God this week and prayerfully commit to giving financially to either a ministry in our area, maybe a missionary that we support, or even a ministry here at our church. Give just a little bit of what God has given you and see how God will bless you. Also, don't forget to be praying for those people that are going to be coming on Easter Sunday. And remember, at CLC, we exist to love God, love self, and love people.